How did fantasy football shape the NFL's rise to #1 sport in America? Hey there, football fanatics. Casey Lambert here, your go-to branding expert from AZEE Branding Solutions, where we help you grow your brand from A to Z. Today, we're diving into something that's not just a game, but a cultural phenomenon: fantasy football. We're peeling back the layers to explore how fantasy football became more than just a pastime, how it became a part of everyday life for the regular guy, and, believe it or not, how it played a crucial role in propelling the NFL to the top spot as America's #1 sport. So grab your helmets, let's huddle up. Let's start with a little history lesson. Fantasy football was born in the early 1960s, but it wasn't until the internet era of the late 90s and early 2000s that it really took off. The introduction of online platforms like Yahoo Sports and ESPN made it easier than ever to join a league, draft players, and track your team's performance in real time. What once required hours of manual stat tracking could now be done with just a few clicks. By 2003, around 15 million people were playing fantasy football. But the real explosion came in the late 2000s. Between 2007 and 2014, the number of fantasy football players in the US nearly doubled, growing from 19 million to over 33 million. By 2019, that number has soared to around 60 million, according to Fantasy Sports and Gambling Association. That's right, nearly 60 million people in America were crafting teams, making trades, and watching games with bated breath every single Sunday. And that's just in the US. Now, let's talk branding. What made fantasy football so irresistible to the everyday man? First off, it's all about control. Fantasy football gives fans the power to build and manage their own teams, to make decisions that can lead to victory or defeat. It's the ultimate way to feel connected to the sport that you love. The branding behind fantasy football was genius in that it was marketed as accessible and inclusive. You didn't have to be a die-hard football expert to join the league. All you needed was a love for the game. The platforms were designed to be user-friendly with simple interfaces and tons of content to make them appealing to the most casual fan to get into the game. And let's not forget about the community aspect. Fantasy football brought people together, from office colleagues to old friends, all connecting. It turned watching football from a solitary experience into a shared event. The growth of fantasy football also played perfectly into the rise of social media. The 2000s saw the emergence of platforms like Facebook and Twitter, where fantasy players could talk smack to each other, share insights, and brag about their victories. This digital camaraderie helped fantasy football embed itself into the daily lives of millions, making it a social experience as much as a sporting one. So how did all this fantasy football fever help the NFL? Well, let's start with viewership. Fantasy football players watch more games, according to research by the Fantasy Sports Trade Association. 63% of fantasy players report watching more NFL games because of their fantasy teams. And it's not just about watching your favorite teams anymore. You're watching games you wouldn't normally care about, all because you have a player in that matchup. This increased viewership translated into more advertising revenue for networks and the NFL itself. The league quickly recognized the value of fantasy football, and by the mid-2000s, they were fully embracing it. They began integrating fantasy stats into broadcasts, creating fantasy-centric content, and even launching their own fantasy football platform in 2010. But it's not just about the money. Fantasy football also deepened fan engagement. It made every game matter, every play more important. Fans weren't just rooting for their team to win. They were following individual players across the league. This not only helped the NFL grow its overall fan base, but also created more die-hard fans who were invested in the league week in and week out. As we look ahead, the bond between fantasy football and the NFL seems stronger than ever. With advancements in technology, we're seeing the rise of daily fantasy sports and even more sophisticated platforms that keep fans engaged year-round. The NFL continues to innovate, with fantasy integrations into their broadcast, apps, and marketing strategies, ensuring that fantasy football remains a core part of the fan experience. But what's the takeaway here for brands? Fantasy football's success story is a masterclass in creating an accessible, engaging, and community-driven product. It's all about meeting your audience where they are and giving them a sense of ownership and connection. Whether you're in the sports world or not, these principles can help build your brand from A to Z. And there you have it, the brand behind fantasy football and its monumental impact on the NFL. What started as a niche hobby is now an integral part of American culture and has played a key role in making the NFL the powerhouse it is today. So next time you set your lineup or trash talk your buddy in the group chat, remember, you're part of something much bigger. If you like this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and tackle that subscribe button. For AZEE Branding Solutions, I'm Casey Lambert. Thanks for watching, and go Lions! That was way too fast. Take two. Football. Oh, this is crazy. Why did I write this? So.